The morning air in Maple Glen, Ohio smelled like wet grass and coffee, the unofficial fragrance of the Midwest. It was one of those bright, almost too perfect Saturdays that made the sky look Photoshop. The kind of day where the sun didn't just rise, it strutted in like it owned the place. The whole town was outside. Lawn mowers buzzed like an army of angry bees. Dogs barked from white fenced yards. And on Elmwood Street, right by the old Maple Glen Elementary, a group of neighbors were gathering for something equally exciting and ridiculous, the Annual Community Kite Day. No one remembered exactly who started it. Some said it began when Mr. Hargrove, the barber, lost his hat in a gust of wind back in 2003 and called it destiny. Others claimed Linda Mayer, the PTA queen, invented it just to keep the kids off their phones for an afternoon. Either way, it had become a town tradition, part competition, part chaos, and mostly comedy. And this year, Calvin Brooks was determined to win. Calvin was the kind of guy who took every small town event way too seriously. He'd been a high school gym teacher for 12 years, which meant his life revolved around dodgeballs, motivational quotes, and losing every single faculty meeting argument to the math department. His students loved him, though, mostly because he never remembered to take attendance. He lived alone in a tan, slightly leaning two-story house that looked like it had survived a tornado and a midlife crisis. The garage was full of half-built projects, a treadmill desk, a wooden kayak, a self-ironing shirt contraption that nearly set his smoke alarm off last winter. This morning, he stood proudly in his driveway, holding a kite the size of a small car door. It was bright red, with a big lightning bolt painted across it, hand-drawn with questionable artistry. Across the tail, written in uneven black marker, were the words, "Fly hard or go home." His neighbor, Doris Campbell, an 82-year-old widow who wore sneakers with rhinestones and always carried a Diet Dr. Pepper, watched him from her porch. "Calvin," she called out, squinting over her sunglasses, "that kite looks like it's designed to take down a plane." "Mom," Calvin said, adjusting his baseball cap backward like a battle helmet, "this year, I'm bringing science into it." "Oh, boy," Doris muttered. "Last time you said that, your mailbox caught fire." Calvin ignored her skepticism. He had reinforced the kite's frame with carbon fiber rods ordered online and coated the string in low-friction fishing line lubricant. He'd even attached a GoPro for aerial victory footage. It was a high-tech masterpiece, at least in his imagination. By noon, half the town had gathered at Maple Glen Park, a big open field behind the high school, bordered by maples and food trucks. It was the kind of event that defined the town's personality, messy, funny, and deeply neighborly. Kids ran barefoot through puddles, chasing bubbles. The mayor, Frank Driscoll, was flipping burgers in an apron that read, "Grill Power." Local businesses had sponsored booths. The hardware store sold discount kites, the bakery handed out free donuts shaped like clouds, and the yoga studio was trying to convince skeptical retirees that deep breathing could improve flight performance. Calvin arrived like a man entering a boxing ring. His kite rested across his shoulders. He wore aviator sunglasses, a red hoodie with Brooks P. Department printed on the back, and a confidence he clearly didn't earn. His friend Jesse Palmer, the town's paramedic, saw him and grinned. "You know you said this same thing before the chili cook-off, right?" The phrase, "this year I'm bringing science into it," still gives me heartburn. "Today's different," Calvin said. "Today's about physics, wind patterns, and destiny." "Destiny's blowing east," Jesse pointed out, gesturing at the windsock leaning 45 degrees sideways. But Calvin was undeterred. He marched to the start line, where Linda Mayer stood with a clipboard and her signature power smile. "Participants," she called out, megaphone in hand. "Remember, the goal is simple. Get your kite the highest, keep it the longest, and don't accidentally knock out a drone this year." A small cheer rippled through the crowd. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. Fly! A field full of bright color erupted skyward. Some kites soared beautifully, others nose-dived immediately. Calvin's kite, however, did both. It rocketed up like a rocket, then snapped violently backward, dragging him face-first into the mud. Laughter exploded across the field. Jessie nearly dropped her soda. Doris filmed the whole thing from her phone, whispering commentary like a nature documentary. "Observe the Ohio male in his natural habitat, gravity's favorite victim." Calvin popped up, hair plastered with grass, holding the kite string triumphantly. "It's called a soft launch," he shouted, which only made the kids laugh harder. But somehow, against all odds, the kite caught the wind. It jerked, spun, then stabilized, rising higher, pulling tighter. The crowd gasped. Calvin looked up in awe. The GoPro flashed green. He could hear Doris clapping. And then, the line snapped. The kite shot upward, completely free, sailing across Maple Glen like a bright red comet of failure. It flew over the food trucks, looped around the church steeple, and vanished beyond the trees. Silence. Then, from somewhere behind the crowd, a small boy said, "Does that count as flying high?" Calvin sighed. "It counts as learning," he muttered, hands on hips, covered in mud and glory. Later, at the diner, half the town replayed his launch on their phones like it was the Super Bowl. Calvin became the unofficial meme of Maple Glen. The video title, "Man Loses Kite, Wins Internet." And yet, somewhere inside him, a quiet voice whispered that maybe the kite wasn't gone. Maybe it was still flying, proof that sometimes, the moment you lose control is when things actually take off. That night, he sat on his porch with Doris, sipping lemonade and watching the sunset melt into the tree line. "You know," she said, "for a guy who face-planted, you sure looked happy out there." He smiled faintly. "Guess I needed the string to snap to see how far it could go." Doris nodded. "Honey, that's life in a nutshell. You hold tight until it's time to let go." Morning came slower the next day, the kind of quiet, sleepy Sunday Maple Glen specialized in. Dew shimmered on every blade of grass, and the air had that crisp smell of drying mud and leftover barbecue. The flood of laughter from the kite fiasco had settled overnight, but the ripples were still spreading through town. At Maple Glen Diner, the unofficial community headquarters, the booths buzzed with post-festival gossip. "I heard his kite landed on a dairy farm 5 miles out," said Peggy Tomlin, pouring coffee with the same energy she used to break up gossip she just started. No, corrected Deputy Ron, stirring his cream. "It was spotted hanging from the radio tower near Mill Creek. Looked majestic, honestly, like freedom met bad aim." The door jingled open, and in walked Calvin Brooks, hero of yesterday's entertainment. His hoodie was still muddy, his pride only half repaired. The moment he entered, the whole diner applauded, not mockingly, but affectionately, the way small towns do when someone unintentionally becomes a legend. Calvin grinned, raised a mock salute, and slid into a booth where Jesse Palmer was already waiting with 2 pancakes drowning in syrup. "You're famous, Brooks," Jesse said. "They're calling you the right brother who forgot the brakes." Calvin chuckled. "Good, means I'm trending upward." He took a sip of his coffee, strong enough to power a lawnmower, and sighed. "You ever feel like you're doing everything right, but the string still snaps?" Jesse nodded, then said, "Yeah, but sometimes that's when you actually start flying." Calvin looked up, eyebrows raised. "That's weirdly poetic for someone who once sprained an ankle jumping over a sandwich board." "Growth," Jesse said, smirking. "I've been reading those daily affirmations you keep posting on the school bulletin board." Outside, the day warmed up beautifully. The kind of sunshine that makes you want to believe in second chances. But Maple Glen wasn't done laughing yet. On the community Facebook page, Calvin's kite adventure had been shared over 8,000 times, attracting comments like, "This man is the spirit of Ohio in human form. Send this guy to NASA." Proof that failure can be cinematic. Instead of hiding from it, Calvin leaned in. He posted a reply video. "For those asking, yes, the kite's gone. But if anyone finds it, please return it with minimal cow prints." Within an hour, someone messaged him, a farmer named Todd McAllister, from the outskirts of town. The kite had indeed landed, wrapped around a weather vane, perfectly intact except for the missing GoPro. Todd invited him to come pick it up, adding, "Also, I made banana bread." Calvin drove out that afternoon, the road curving through golden fields and worn barns. The world looked softer after failure, somehow more forgiving. When he reached Todd's farm, the scene was so absurdly perfect it could have been a commercial. Wide open sky, red barn, wind turbine spinning lazily in the distance. And there it was, his big red kite, caught like a trophy at the top of the barn roof, fluttering proudly. Todd, a kind man with suspenders and a beard that could trap small animals, greeted him with a grin. "You're the kite guy?" Calvin sighed. "Unfortunately, yes. You're famous here," Todd said. "My cows are demanding autographs." They both laughed. Calvin climbed up to retrieve his kite, the wind tugging gently as if teasing him. When he finally got it down, he noticed something strange. The string hadn't snapped from tension. It had been cut clean, like by a sharp edge. Maybe the radio tower, maybe just bad luck. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. He stood there, holding it, feeling something shift inside him. The kite wasn't a failure. It was proof he'd tried to reach higher than usual. That evening, back in town, he fixed the kite again, this time with the help of nearly everyone. Linda Mayer brought stronger twine. Doris offered duct tape and unsolicited wisdom. Jessie brought snacks, because no good idea survives hunger. Even the mayor stopped by, holding a bag of zip ties like a man about to build a rocket. They worked in Calvin's driveway under the glow of string lights, laughing more than building. Doris kept saying, "Remember, it's not how high it goes, it's how gracefully it crashes." Calvin finally tied the last knot, stepped back, and smiled. "All right," he said, "if this thing flies again, we're naming it Round 2. Round 2, Linda repeated with a grin. Now that's a comeback name. The next morning, they gathered again in Maple Glen Park. The field was still damp, but spirits were dry and ready. This time, no one came to compete. They came to help one man finish what he started. Kids wore red paper kites on their shirts. The local bakery unveiled a new treat, sky-high muffins. The mayor even brought a speaker system playing Eye of the Tiger on repeat until someone begged him to stop. The wind was perfect. Calvin stood at the center, the repaired kite in his hands. The town fell quiet. A hush of expectation moved through the air like static before a storm. He looked around at all the faces, laughing, supportive, familiar, and realized something. The first time, he wanted to prove himself. This time, he just wanted to fly with them. "All right," he said, smiling, "let's pull together." He ran. The kite lifted. The wind caught. The line went taut, and held. Cheers erupted. The kite soared high, brighter than ever, gleaming red against the blue. It danced, swayed, and steadied, tethered by that invisible line between control and freedom. Doris dabbed her eyes behind her sunglasses. Jessie fist-pumped the air. Linda yelled, "Go, Brooks, go," like a high school coach at state finals. And in that moment, sunlight, laughter, and all, Maple Glen looked like the kind of place where life worked exactly as it should. Imperfect, hilarious, but beautifully alive. Then, as if on cue, a bird swooped too close. The kite dipped, spun, and nose-dived, directly into the mayor's burger stand. Smoke, ketchup, and comedy exploded in equal measure. The crowd froze. Calvin froze. The mayor blinked at his ruined grill, then burst out laughing. "Guess we're having flame-grilled irony tonight." The field roared with laughter again. Calvin, wiping mustard from his hoodie, bowed dramatically. "Ladies and gentlemen, physics, humility, and one heck of a community." Later that day, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Calvin sat again with Doris on the porch. The sky was streaked pink and gold, like watercolor. "You know," Doris said softly, "your kite didn't just fly. It pulled everyone up a little." He smiled. "Guess that's the trick. The higher you go, the stronger you gotta hold that pull." Doris chuckled. "Or at least hold onto your dignity." They both laughed, watching kids run across the park in the distance, chasing the wind with tiny dollar store kites that somehow still managed to fly. Calvin leaned back, feeling the gentle tug of a new kind of pull, the one between heart and hope. Sometimes, the string that holds you back is also the thing that lifts you higher. And somewhere above Maple Glen, a small red kite, tatted, taped, and determined, caught the last shimmer of sunlight, flying high against the fading sky.
Like and subscribe if you want daily dose of happiness and motivation.